Hello everyone, my name is Byška, and in this video I would like to present the results from our survey about the state of the art of molecular visualization in immersive virtual environments. The paper was published in Computer Graphics Forum, so before we jump into it, I would like to thank the Star Trek chairs for allowing us to present our work at Eurovis. The significant benefits of virtual environments for visualizing scientific data were established decades ago. However, only recently the affordable immersive hardware, especially in the form of head-mounted displays, made it more widespread. Unfortunately, there is still no clear consensus about the terminology. To avoid misunderstandings, we stick to the definition by Milgram and Kishino, who proposed to use the mixed reality for the whole virtuality continuum between the augmented and virtual reality. In this context, augmented reality describes techniques that combine digital information with the real world, and virtual reality refers to the techniques where the user is put into a purely virtual and fully immersive environment. Our survey focuses specifically on molecular visualization, as it has been a very active area of research for more than 5 decades. Visualizing molecules is essential because it provides means to explore data that is otherwise inaccessible to a human observer in the physical world. Since depicting molecules typically involves complex 3D models, it is not surprising that the use of stereoscopic displays has a long tradition in molecular visualization. Especially since this technology makes it easier to understand the spatial relationships between individual entities, and thus it helps biologists to understand their function better. Since molecular visualization and virtual environments have been around for a few decades, it is not surprising that several surveys covered relevant research in this area. We can list works focusing on general molecular visualization or immersive environments and their application for visualization in general. Some of these surveys even focus on utilizing immersive environments for biomedical applications. So why should you read our survey? Well, in comparison to the existing surveys, we do not focus on one specific application case. We cover the field of immersive molecular visualization as a whole. Our particular focus is the use of modern head-mounted platforms, but we also discuss related areas, such as the use of caves, stereo displays, or handheld augmented reality. Furthermore, we take a visualization-centric perspective on the existing work, while some of the previous works primarily provide an application-centric perspective. We classify all approaches that we review in this report based on their application domain, supported visualization tasks, as well as type of the evaluation that is being performed by the authors. Apart from the paper survey, we also collected a comprehensive list of available software tools, which you will find in our supplementary materials. At this point, I should also mention that all the references in this presentation correspond to those in our paper. We are also discussing available hardware for mixed reality, associated interaction devices, and their advantages and shortcomings. However, since the time for this presentation is limited, I will only briefly discuss some of the specific details, so we have more time to talk about visualization-related topics. There are 3 types of dedicated devices for mixed reality: cave-like systems, stereoscopic displays, and head-mounted displays. From these 3, only head-mounted devices seem to receive widespread attention. Although some molecular visualization systems were developed for cave-like systems, most of the research in visualization is nowadays performed using head-mounted displays. Similarly, handheld devices like smartphones or tablets are often used for simple augmented reality applications due to their widespread use. One of the often mentioned key advantages of mixed reality is the ability of the users to observe the complexity and internal relationships of the data. This is quite true for 3D, but in visualization, we commonly use a set of 3D and 2D views in multiple coordinated view layouts. These configurations have only been studied in very few cases in immersive environments, and the user interfaces are still not properly developed in this regard. A second advantage of mixed reality is that some aspects of the interaction are more natural. For example, changing the viewpoint is achieved with simple head movements. Furthermore, the two-handed manipulation in modern virtual reality headsets increases the potential interaction abilities. On the other hand, some of the tasks that are easy to achieve using a mouse and keyboard, such as text inputs, are more difficult using controllers that come with mixed reality devices. While mixed reality devices are often considered to have great benefits for collaboration, they are not perfect in this regard either. For example, in the case of virtual reality, head-mounted displays completely shield the user from their surroundings, and the collaboration may feel less natural. Furthermore, the standalone devices are less powerful than a desktop, limiting the complexity of the scene that can be visualized. On the other hand, wired devices can be annoying for the users. Movements in the virtual world that are not aligned with the real world have to be designed with great care, as motion sickness can occur. Finally, at the moment, no haptic feedback is available, which lessens the user experience. So, as you can see, mixed reality devices have quite some advantages, but are not short of disadvantages either. Which is a good thing actually, at least for the visualization community, as it provides a great potential for future research. But before we explore the existing body of research, let us briefly talk about the process of how we retrieved the individual publications in our survey. We opted for a systematic procedure, combining database queries and manual searches. First, we agreed on a list of keywords that describe the intended area of focus. These keywords were chosen from the three relevant areas: mixed reality, molecular biology, and visualization. Then, we collected a list of databases and search engines potentially containing relevant papers. We assembled various search queries and tested their compatibility and outcomes on the selected databases. After a few iterations, we arrived at the following query. I'm not going into details, as you can find them in our paper, but as you can see, the query combines all three areas mentioned earlier. We used the query in 5 different databases: IEEE Explorer, Web of Science, ACM Digital Library, EG Digital Library, and PubMed. We stored the results in the Zotero. After this step, we defined several preliminary categories which were used for the classification of the papers based on their application area, the technology they use, publication type, or other characteristics. At this point, we also decided to narrow down the search results to papers published in the year 2010 or later, as we wanted to focus primarily on recent technologies. We have then processed in detail the remaining 250 publications, removed duplicated and irrelevant papers, and on the other hand, added publications from a manual search, arriving at final 127 publications you will find in our paper. Our report consists of 2 main parts that arose from the categorization performed during the paper collection. In the first part, application domains, we focus on areas where the presented publications are used. This part is further split into 2 distinct categories: education and research. In the second part, we discuss papers from the perspective of the different goals that can be achieved using the presented approaches. We further divide this part into subparts: visualization and collaboration. We begin our discussion by looking at a domain to which the surveyed papers contribute the most: education. The goal of educative applications is usually straightforward: to increase the knowledge of the target audience. Thus, it is not surprising that most applications we survey focus on students in biology fields. Nevertheless, even student-focused solutions can be further split into several categories based on the expected level of education. The existing publications suggest that different visual representations are more suitable for different groups, such as high school or undergraduate students. Nevertheless, The attractiveness of immersive virtual environments can also make it easier to engage with the public. This brings me to the benefits of immersive environments for education, most often mentioned in the papers we surveyed. Students are tackling several challenges when learning about the structure and function of molecules. Particularly interesting in the context of immersive environments are the difficulties in interpreting spatial relationships in molecular visualization. According to several studies, the students showed increased spatial awareness and performed objectively better when the learning process included mixed reality devices. Other studies reported that students showed increased satisfaction or that the students themselves considered the immersive environments to be useful. An additional important and often mentioned outcome is increased student engagement. Several studies showed that mixed reality solutions have the potential to make lectures more enjoyable, which in turn may have positive effects on the overall learning outcomes and interest in the study subject. One study also focused on students with limited mobility, allowing them to perform laboratory experiments by remotely controlling a specialized robot. Since I was just talking about increased engagement, we can also mention that while gamification has proven educational benefits, we have seen only limited use of this approach in combination with mixed reality for education in chemistry and related fields. The few examples we found, however, cover a broad range on gamification scale, ranging from allowing students to interact with the scene in a playful manner, across utilizing a post-apocalyptic narrative, to allowing users to drive a car along a protein chain with a steering wheel. Educational approaches can be further divided based on whether they aim to broaden the understanding of structural aspects of individual molecules or to understand interactions between the molecules and their dynamics behavior. In the former case, the students mostly perceive and explore the presented structure as is. On the contrary, in the second use case, the students are expected to be more involved with the visualized content by designing new parts or interacting with the data. Here, we can list another example utilizing gamification. An application where students are simulating a nucleophilic attack on a molecule by firing the nucleophile using their fingers. On the other hand, in Pere-Pau, the students can directly modify various properties of amino acid residues, such as torsion angles and strength of hydrogen bonds, to better understand the effect of these changes on the final polypeptide structure. The effects themselves are computed by an underlying molecular simulation approach to provide as real behavior as possible. Used technology is an additional factor distinguishing the educational approaches. The current research covers both virtual and augmented realities. However, we observed that in practice, the choice of technology is not influenced only by the type of experience, but additional factors such as ease of use, portability, the maximum number of students that can use the application at the same time, as well as overall costs and available content may play a significant role. Despite the achievements of the papers we surveyed, there remain some open questions with respect to the use of mixed reality for molecular visualization in education. For example, one of the studies concluded that there is no significant difference between the performance of students when using virtual reality, traditional modeling, or computer simulations for tasks such as building small molecules. The authors of this study speculate that virtual reality may not be beneficial for very simple tasks. Another study observed that students did not sufficiently consider the spatial aspects of the presented molecules, despite the fact they were naturally available thanks to the immersive visualization, and rather focused on other representations when performing some of the tasks. This suggests that additional research allowing better integration of non-spatial information is necessary. Finally, one of the studies showed that the use of immersive environments might lead to a high cognitive load since it places the user in an unknown environment, offering multiple points of interest. Thus, the depth of scientific information and structural detail should be properly tailored. With that being said, let's move to research applications. In our analysis, we identified several use cases where the mixed reality was used for research purposes. These include structural analysis, interactive drug design, molecular dynamic simulations, modeling and model building approaches, and exploration of non-spatial data. For structural analysis tasks, the stereoscopic view provided by immersive devices is again often mentioned as an advantage, allowing the identification of features in the dynamic 3D environment that would otherwise remain hidden in the 2D display. Additional advantages mentioned by some of the publications are the natural interactions and that head movements can precisely manipulate the camera. However, the advantages of mixed reality devices may not serve solely for the exploration purposes. Several publications connect the immersive environment to analysis and modeling components. Such a link allows more complex on-the-fly analysis, as well as using immersive environments to prepare data and input parameters for executing more expensive simulations later. Similar to educational purposes, the immersive environments can be, of course, also utilized for dissemination purposes among fellow scientists. In drug design, visually exploring the spatial conformation of multiple molecules is essential. Therefore, it is not surprising that interactive drug design is one of the most prominent use cases for immersive environments described in the existing publications. The most common reasons for using mixed reality are again the added spatial awareness and natural interactions that are particularly suitable for manually adjusting the position of molecules when performing docking. A key challenge that was not yet fully resolved is that the manipulation can have two purposes in this case. Either changing the position of a molecule merely to get a better view, or as a change in the actual spatial conformation. Finally, drug development teams often bring together scientists from different backgrounds, for whom the intuitive, immersive environments make it easier to share insight about 3D molecular data. However, immersive manipulation allows the user to go beyond simply examining a static model. The idea, which is common in the literature, is to provide the user with a tool to quickly understand the response of molecular systems to a given user input. For example, in the figure here, you can see an illustration from the work of O'Connor and colleagues, where the user creates a knot on a polypeptide chain in a real-time simulation. It is worth noting that for the exploration of dynamic data, multiple authors have already explored immersive environments at different price points, ranging from caves over head-mounted displays, which are the most common, to Google Cardboard-like devices. Molecular dynamics are often performed as a part of model building activities. In this particular use case, the idea is to create a 3D model typically based on experimental data, such as X-ray crystallography or cryomicroscopy for modeling proteins, or Hi-C data when it comes to modeling DNA shape. Several approaches allow users also build molecules from scratch entirely manually. While the authors typically report a significant speed up when modeling is performed in immersive environments instead of using a desktop, there are a few works that offer quite a nice insight into the challenges connected to modeling in immersive environments. First of all, the users can quickly become tired from the elevated arm position. Therefore, some of the authors suggest that the arm should rest on a surface and the modeling session should be less than 25 minutes to limit the eye and neck strain. In our own work, we also observed that the exact alignment of structures is difficult as the controller has to be held in 3D space in front of the user. Apparently, the biggest challenge of working in fully virtual environment using head-mounted displays is isolation. Actions like drinking coffee, using other software, or even taking notes become very tedious as the user needs to take off the headset every time. I would also like to bring your attention to one of the works where the authors went beyond the software and proposed peripherals such as tongs, ray guns, and multipurpose handles, specifically designed to build DNA molecules. I unfortunately cannot show you how it works due to the copyright on the images, but I encourage you to check it out yourself later. The last part I want to cover before moving to specific visualization tasks is non-spatial data. While most of the works we survey naturally focus on 3D aspects of molecular data, we have found a handful of works that use the added dimension in the immersive environment to lay out the non-spatial data. For example, in the figure here, we see an application that displays additional information about a protein sequence on a 2D plane. However, some of the works used immersive environments to study intrinsically non-spatial data as their main objective. These works primarily focus on genomic data and networks, as can be seen in the figure here. Alright, after having discussed education and research use cases, we now turn our attention to specific tasks supported by immersive tools. In our paper, we use classification described by Ben Schneiderman. Therefore, we start with the overview task. Most techniques described in the survey papers provided the users with an overview of the data by showing the whole molecule in 3D using common spatial representations. The main reason is that zooming out is a fast way to get an overview of the entire data by reducing the overall size of all molecules. Only a few surveyed papers provide representations tailored explicitly for overview purposes. These include the work of Probst and Raymond, who depict molecules as single points in a point cloud and show the actual molecules only when a user is close enough. Other approaches include overlay minimaps, autofocus and context techniques. In biology, derived quantitative measures often provide a good overview of specific structural properties. However, they are challenging to display in immersive environments. Therefore, while having great potential, these approaches have been explored only little so far and remain a good opportunity for future research. The mixed reality zoom in and out operations are equivalent to the desktop-based zoom operations, where users increase or decrease the size of the structure to see more or fewer details respectively. Depending on the type of mixed reality devices, the users can use a pair of controllers, special gloves, or even fingers to perform gestures that will zoom in and out on items of interest. The users are also often allowed to move the molecules closer to them, which makes them larger due to the perspective camera. This is typically achieved by grabbing the molecules with controllers or remotely by pulling objects selected by raycasting closer to the user. A similar effect can be achieved by letting users move or teleport closer to the object. While it seems that the zoom task was mostly solved, some unique solutions recently appeared. These include slow-moving platforms that carry users through the virtual scene as elevators, or using voice commands to free users' hands for other tasks. Tasks, such as selection and filtering, are inherently coupled with visualization. Nevertheless, especially in early approaches, we often saw uses of mixed reality technology only to display molecular data without any filtering or selection support. Only recently, the researchers recognized the challenges posed by cluttered molecular environments and allow users to hide molecules or their parts, use clipping, or utilize opacity to suppress unimportant data. Nevertheless, we believe that there is still quite some room for further improvements, as we have not seen any advanced filtering and selection approaches that would come close to those we can use in desktop applications. One of the exceptions is a context-aware selection technique depicted in the figure here, allowing users to quickly select the correct atoms of interest in cluttered molecular environments by allowing them to adjust the selection based on atom neighborhood. Additional details are often provided by labels that appear when users touch, hover over, or point towards a part of a molecule with a controller. The more recent molecular viewers allow changing between multiple molecular representations. Here, we observed two main approaches. Either the control is left to the user, or an appropriate representation is selected automatically. For manual approaches, users may be able to adjust the level of detail either globally or locally via more complex lenses. In automatic approaches, the distance from the camera is often used as the main criterion. An interesting take on details on demand was provided by a few publications which consider immersive environments only as one of the modalities that can be used to explore the data. In these attempts, the authors combined mixed reality with desktop-based applications. In desktop applications, the details are often retrieved via brushing and linked views. But we have not yet seen a fully fledged solution for immersive environments. Furthermore, while means of smoothly transitioning between different visual abstractions exist in a non-immersive visualization, we did not find any solution that would offer similar means in mixed reality environments. The relate task pertains to understanding the relationship between the visual elements in the virtual scene. The most common task was to relate various parts of datasets, for example different molecules or their parts, to each other. We found 4 distinct ways this visual relationship can be formed: collocation, spatial, dynamic, or using explicit visual elements. Collocation is used when visual elements appear at the same location, and the user can switch between them. As the representations occupy the same space, it indicates to the user that the same data or its derivatives are depicted. Another special form of collocation is the possibility of sharing viewpoints in collaborative environments, but we will discuss this later in this talk. The spatial relation is used when, due to the proximity and geometric features of visual elements, users can derive an interaction between these 2 visual elements. This typically concerns 2 spatial properties: the position and geometry of objects. In virtual reality, users can relate these 2 properties by grabbing the 2 objects and positioning them side by side. In this way, the users can, for example, try to fit another small molecule into a pocket in a protein to understand the interaction between them. The dynamic relation refers to the case when the same visual element appears and can be recognized at the different time steps. It was used quite often, since many of the papers we analyzed were concerned with dynamic data. Here, the task is often to set up the computation parameters or understand action-reaction relationships when exploring the results of molecular dynamics simulation. Finally, the most common method to encode relationships and properties is via explicit visual elements, such as lines, highlights, and glyphs. The main reason is that, in comparison to desktop applications, it is more challenging to use multiple coordinated views. Hence, the relationship is typically encoded by spatial objects themselves, such as by emojis on atoms in the figure here. More challenging are cases where there are one-to-many or many-to-many relationships between the spatial elements and other non-spatial data. A typical solution to this challenge is to use 2D planes embedded within the 3D environment, where additional non-spatial information is depicted. The majority of papers we surveyed described research prototypes that only rarely keep track of user actions. The few exceptions include the ability to reset the application to one of the few preset states, or track the user actions for undue functionality. In our opinion, there is a clear opportunity to explore provenance visualization when it comes to immersive environments. The tracking of the user's head and controllers provides valuable information on their behavior, which can be analyzed in experiments and used for further navigation. Extraction of subset of data to another file for sharing, further analysis, and presentation is one of the last tasks defined by Ben Schneiderman. But none of the papers and techniques we surveyed explicitly discusses it. While the extraction task is often neglected in research prototypes, we believe that these features will play a crucial role in the future, especially because the immersive environment often does not provide a full feature set but only deals with a certain subset of user tasks. Therefore, a seamless data exchange, possibly based on the FAIR model, will be required to fit the mixed reality into more complex workflows. While seemingly easy on desktop, this task involves navigation through a file structure and text input, which is inherently challenging, especially in virtual reality, where the possibility to use external devices such as keyboard is limited. This brings me to the second part of the task section, where we will briefly look at collaborative workflows. While not extensively explored in the papers we surveyed, asynchronous use of immersive environments seems to be especially important for collaboration across different time zones, or in cases when a performance of a user in an immersive environment should be later evaluated, and most importantly, for education. In this respect, Brugge and colleagues explored the possibility of preparing the study materials directly in virtual reality. Such content can be later entered and interactively explored by students. When it comes to synchronous collaboration, the main challenges that must be addressed are presence awareness, attention awareness, and action awareness. The presence awareness is typically handled by displaying the individual participants as avatars so that others can see them. When appropriate, the controllers are also mapped to virtual hands or virtual models of those controllers. Which brings me to the attention awareness, because one of the main reasons for having virtual hands is the ability to point to parts of the virtual scene. Some of the authors even utilize a laser pointer emitting from one of the fingers or the controller to allow more precise pointing. Finally, action awareness is probably the most challenging part, as having multiple users interacting with the scene simultaneously may lead to various clashes. While some of the works we surveyed did not address this challenge and simply let the users interact with the scene freely, others came up with specific solutions. Among these are solutions that assign a special role or token to a user, who is then allowed to interact with the system. Negotiations between users who will be allowed to interact next are then realized through text or voice communication. One of the approaches allows multiple users to interact with the scene, but requires them to define areas of interest, that is, the areas that the users plan to interact with. These areas are then visible to others, allowing them to better avoid clashes. Finally, some of the applications also provide support for other types of users, such as ghost users, that can join the virtual environment but are invisible to others, or passive viewers that can observe what is happening in the immersive environment on their 2D screens. Finally, I would like to quickly discuss how the new techniques developed in the field of immersive molecular visualizations are typically evaluated. I will start by prefacing that there are no established procedures for the evaluation of the presented results. 5 basic levels of evaluation seem to be currently employed in general. Authors of almost half of the publications completely omit evaluation, or at least they do not mention it in their publication. In 13% of cases, the evaluation is informal. That is, it is mentioned that some people tried the presented work and shared their impressions, but no specific procedure is presented. In about 27%, the specific evaluation procedure was designed to allow authors to statistically analyze the results. In 9%, the authors involved a smaller number of users, often experts in a particular domain, who provided subjective feedback on their given work. Finally, in the last 5% of publications, the evaluation is performed by comparing the properties of achieved results with other existing solutions. The choice of specific evaluation seems to be also affected by the domain and target audience of the application. For example, for applications aimed at education, it is often a natural choice to use quantitative evaluation with a group of students, while research publications typically use qualitative evaluation with a smaller group of scientists. In our survey, we have also identified several examples of quantitative and qualitative evaluations that were, in our opinion, designed very well and may serve as inspiration to others. To conclude, for our state-of-the-art report, we systematically surveyed, analyzed, and classified papers that report on molecular visualization in mixed reality environments. We found that most of the research somehow relates to education. In addition, many research projects came from the domain experts themselves, rather than from the field of visualization. This shows that there is a need within the molecular science community for mixed reality solutions. However, it also means that we need to communicate the research that was done within the application domain to our visualization community and build upon it. We found that much of the research focuses on using mixed reality for viewing and interacting with molecules for a specific use case. While this is a valid first step, future research should also focus on experiments to understand which interactions and representations are better suited for given tasks in immersive molecular visualization. We envision that the established paradigms rooted in mouse and keyboard-based interactions are simply not valid anymore. Moreover, there is a set of tools, such as 2D charts, that are not easily ported to mixed reality, and the number of studies regarding the perception of such views is small. This does not mean that we need to mimic every desktop task or tool in mixed reality applications. However, researchers rather have to start thinking about mixed reality applications from scratch and see what we can do with it. So, I would like to end with the slide summarizing the 4 areas that we believe are key challenges and should be explored in future research. We need to further explore and take advantage of the specificity of the mixed reality hardware and utilize it for enhanced interactions with molecular models. We should focus on rendering performance, as the molecular systems that are explored by biologists nowadays often contain millions or even billions of atoms, and the scene must be rendered stereoscopically with high refresh rates to avoid motion sickness. One of the most interesting challenges for us as a visualization community is to find a way to incorporate 2D charts into immersive molecular applications, such that they are more useful. And finally, we conclude that the process of validation of outcomes is still in a rather early stage, and some standards for evaluation of mixed reality molecular approaches might be necessary. With that, I'm at the end of my talk. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, catch me during a coffee break at Eurovis 2023 or write me an email.